Surrender to me!
Je vous remercie de me recevoir, Votre Majesté. Please speak English.
Nonsense. Dauphin. Oh, please speak English.
I enjoy to speak
Yeah,
English.
he loves it.
Surrender to me!
But anyways, that's not even a problem. The problem is that Dauphin wasn't there.
To me!
The prince was not there. So the entire section with the duel and the fight and then the prince gets killed and all that situation, this talking and the mocking and the never happened. Never happened. Spoiler alert. Ah, Dauphin. Ah, pourquoi, Dauphin? Pourquoi? Je voudrais manger une baguette, s'il vous plaît.
Surrender to me!
Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and there is something with filmmakers and the word king. They just love it, because think about it, in the last few years we have had the king, the outlaw king, the woman king. I'm really looking forward to see what next, and the next one is going to be what, the vampire king? Oh, that would be awesome actually. The pasta king should be the pasta king. I vote for pasta king. Alright, so here we are, history hit. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. Let's see how it's going to be today. Medieval historian breaks down the King movie. Deep dives. Let's go. I kind of would have wanted him to talk about Outlaw King, because Outlaw King had better equipment than King. Maybe that's why it was outlawed.
And this idea that they get straight to, they've forgotten the swords and now they're just rolling around the floor, I think would be fairly accurate of the way some of these duels might have played out.
I actually like the fact that they're using the steel fists now. Boom, like that. Yeah, go for it.
Having liked the barefootedness, not a fan of the bare-toppedness. Oh no, guess who Henry's found? The hero of Agincourt. No, he's dead.
I wish it was Ted from TED Talk.
Oh, will England do? Hello, I'm Matt Lewis and I'm here today to take a deep dive into 2019's movie, The King, of Shakespeare's Henry V. So a reimagination of something that isn't historically accurate entirely. Anyway.
No, that's good. That's good to put that one in frame so that, you know, it can calm our spirits a little bit. Oh yeah, the Vampire King. So that's the Vampire King, by the way. Bella, where are you?
It's had some criticisms. It's had plenty of love. I quite like it, but I have problems with it.
Same, exactly the same. I enjoyed the 2 hours I spent watching it back in the day. Would I watch it again? No. But there are a few things, yeah, I do have some problems. I want to see if we have the same problems. Let's see. Yeah.
Let's take a deep dive. It would be quite nice if they gave you some hint who this is or what's going on.
Yeah.
We will find out in a moment that this is Henry Hotspur Percy. And they don't ever explain in this film either why he's called Henry Hotspur Percy. It's a nickname that was given to him at the time, and it's believed to derive from the fact that he was always so keen to rush headlong into battle. So he had hot spurs, you know, he would be digging them into his horse to drive his horse into battle. He was always keen for a fight. He was a knight with the hot spurs.
Respect.
Henry Hotspur. So this is kind of setting the scene for the idea that the Percys are protecting the north of England for the kings.
My gosh, look at this. The armor is so weird with the proportions of the fold. It looks like it's made... Well, first of all, it looks like plastic. Beyond, it looks like foam. If you get easily annoyed by people who get easily annoyed by armor imperfections, then this might not be the video for you. Spoiler alert, okay? I'm just gonna put it out there. We're gonna compare it with another really good movie that they made on this. Alright, learning all of these things that are fascinating about all of this stuff is fun, but you know what's even more fun? Making your own. And this is why I would like to take a moment to mention the kind sponsor that made this video possible, World Anvil. Man, what a sponsor. Now, whether you are into RPGs as a player or a DM, tabletop games, or perhaps you're a fantasy novelist, World Anvil is the ultimate all-in-one software for you. If you are the creative type and you enjoy world building, then World Anvil is not just a tool, it's 3 tools in one. It acts as a world-building suite, an RPG campaign maker, and a novel writing and publishing tool. Personally, I'm interested in all 3 things, but let's say for a moment that you are, I don't know, creating an RPG campaign. Then World Anvil can absolutely work as an excellent RPG campaign manager. You can have interactive maps, you can use all sorts of settings. D&D, Pathfinder, you name it. There are more than 45 RPGs in it, and the number of dungeon masters that actually use it's over 2 million, and that speaks for itself. World Anvil is an incredible suite of creative tools for game masters, players, fantasy sci-fi authors, and multimedia storytellers. You have digital GM screens and campaign managers, novel planner and writing software with drag and drop scenes and chapters, as well as publishing, subscription and monetization features, interactive maps, family trees. If you're into even one of all of the things that I mentioned, then absolutely click the link in the description and use my code Metatron to get a 51% off any premium subscription. And massive thanks to World Anvil for sponsoring my video.
I know you've travelled far.
I'm gonna have to skip this so they will demonetize.
We've got the arrival of Henry IV, so a man who has stolen the throne from his cousin Richard II a few years earlier. And he's presented here as in really bad health. This comes later in Henry IV's life, maybe. When he takes the throne, he's actually a famous crusading warrior, and everybody thinks he's going to be a fantastic king. Captured fighting in Wales, Henry IV refuses to pay his ransom, and there is a strong sense.
Look at that beautiful mace over there. I actually want you to focus on this mace very quickly. Sorry, Matt, if I take the helm. Did you notice? It's a flanged mace, of course. But if you remember, not too long ago, I was actually talking about how sometimes replicas of maces of this specific type tend to make the flanges too thin. And this is actually an excellent example to see just that. Look at the thickness of the flanges. If you ever want to get a replica of such a mace, make sure that they get the thickness correct. Otherwise, it's not really gonna represent the mace well, and I feel like you wouldn't be getting a good deal for your money.
That this is Henry allowing a potential rival to be negated. But the Mortimers are in-laws. They're related by marriage to the Percy family. So the Percy family are trying to use their influence to protect the Mortimer members of their family, and finding out that Henry IV is not playing ball, he's not giving them what they want, he won't pay cousin Mortimer's ransom.
And of course, ransoms were very extremely common. This should not be considered as, oh my gosh, how did that even happen? No, it happened a lot in medieval battlefields, because that was what made VIPs on the field much more valuable alive than dead. Because, you know, if you capture a duke, if you capture a prince, if you capture a count, or whatever, you don't want them dead, because you want the family to pay so that then you get the money and then you give it back. That sort of situation. And that's also one of the reasons why, at the end of the day, dukes and counts and high nobility wanted their armor, their banners, their coat of arms to be extremely noticeable. You could tell if someone was a rich nobleman, and that acted not only as a way to show off their rank, but also it would act as a sort of life insurance, if you will, because not only people on your side can see how wealthy, powerful and successful you are, but also the enemies, which would discourage them if things go sour. It actually makes you a harder target to deal with, because you can kill them, but they can't kill you, right? If it's the regular people, billmen and archers even. If an archer maybe would have got a good shot, but it's like, no, it's a high noble there, I don't want to shoot him in the face. Oh, sometimes they do, of course, like they did with Henry himself in the face. But I'm just saying, depending on the situation.
Traitor.
Alright, skipping around 2 sections for those of you who are interested in these sections. Prince Hall and Falstaff and Shakespeare. Prince Hall Disinherited. Then do refer to the original video as a way to encourage people to not just watch my reaction. Link in the description and pinned comment.
Do you know what? I quite like the armour.
I don't.
The camp looks good, tent, realistic, people roaming around. I'm sure someone will correct me, but I actually think they've had a really good crack at some accurate armour here. We'll see what it looks like.
I'll show you what accurate armour looks like in the movie, mate. Let me show you. Laurence Olivier. This is very good armour for a movie production. And keep in mind, this was shot right after World War II. This is incredible armour that looks really, really good, particularly also because it's period. It does actually look like the sort of armor that they would be wearing in 1415, which is when this movie was set. Look at the details. And this is the armor instead we get in The King. So, come on, it's like, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I'm not nitpicking. This is horrible. This is terrible. You know what they did right in this movie? I'll see if he says it first, but the weapons are good. But this I mean, come on. Luckily though, at least the collar here is not bad. We can see even the rivets on the rings, so I appreciate that. The only thing though is this does still seem to be too open, because a lot of medieval, like if this is the actual coif that has been lowered, which is absolutely something that they did in period, but once the coif is back up, it kind of looks like one of those that would leave the entirety of the throat exposed, whereas in reality this would have been, it could at least be fastened in a way that it would provide the sort of protection that you need in war. But at least it's not like a horrible thing that is like knitted mail like we see in Braveheart, so I suppose it's a step in the right direction. Is the one in the back there knitted? Not sure, actually.
We will fight in our army's places.
Nonsense.
Yes, my lord.
The idea that Henry issued this challenge to Hotspur isn't correct.
Exactly.
Again, Hotspur is in his late 30s by this point. Henry is a 16-year-old boy. We don't have a record of him issuing this kind of duel, but there is something in this idea of a duel between two men, because the Catholic Church taught that it was a sin to shed other Christian blood.
It's actually one of the reasons why was this Pope, Catholic Pope, that actually tried to ban crossbows and bows. Everyone forgets that. It's like people repeat this. Oh, there is this papal bull that actually banned crossbows in the medieval period. And bows. It's like if you read it, actually read the bull, it bans both, or at least they try. It's just most countries don't care. But yeah, they're motivated for the same reasons. It's too powerful of a weapon, too many people die, don't kill other Christians. So basically you can spear them to death, but don't shoot with the crossbows because there's too many at that point, I suppose. But yeah, doesn't work. Yeah, well, I wonder if he's going to talk about it, but as you see here, as always in these movies, the throat is always exposed, no matter what.
One good, one bad. I really like that they've gone with helmets on, visors down. This tendency...
Well, I wonder why, though, because visors down, Matt, for a cavalry lance charge, yes, I agree. But for single combat duels, there is a lot of iconography that shows medieval knights fighting visor up. So visor up or visor down are both absolutely viable alternatives, tactical choices for a duel. That's what the iconography shows. I mean, it's fine to fight visor down if that's what you want, but a lot of iconography shows otherwise.
In films, to want to see the face of the actor sometimes does my head in, because it implies that people would willingly fight without any head protection.
And I agree with you. Yes, it's stupid when they remove the helmet altogether, particularly when they do it during cavalry charges. It's like absolutely moronic. But with that being said, medieval knights did choose to fight with the visor up. Absolutely they did that. There is no questions if you spent even 10 minutes with medieval iconography of all sorts of countries. Can be French, could be English, could be Italian, could be German, could be what have you, Portuguese, Spanish. We see it all the time. It is important to not get too carried away and overcorrect. That's basically what I'm saying.
I wish they would do this more often in films and trust that the audience can understand what they're watching and what they're looking at.
Yeah.
My criticism would be going with two swords to fight each other. So a knight fighting against ordinary people might use his sword.
Oh, that was horrible. That looks, I'm sorry, I'm so actually I'm not sorry. I'm telling you how it is. That was the overswing of a beginner, not a trained member of medieval nobility. Like, I know you all cringed right now watching this. It's not just me. Any of you who has ever spent more than a month practicing historical European martial arts and sees that?
A knight fighting against ordinary people might use his sword to cut them down if they're poorly armoured.
He's correct, though. Yes, absolutely. The depending on who you're fighting, what you would do as a knight would change. Totally.
Swords won't do anything against plate armour.
Correct.
Like these people are wearing.
Nice. I actually liked the headbutt, and I like what he's doing now, the tackling and pushing him to the ground. That's pretty good, actually.
And this idea that they get straight to, they've forgotten the swords and now they're just rolling around the floor, I think would be fairly accurate of the way some of these duels might have played out.
So he finished him off with a rondel, which also is, they skipped it here, but it's absolutely correct. That's how you subdue and finish a knight. Once you're upon him, he's on the ground, defenseless, you take a rondel, and either you stick it through the ocularia, so the eye slit, you try and stick it through the throat if he only has mail. It kind of depends on what, if he's got a plate, it would be better at that point to actually lift the visor yourself, which is one of the reasons why some knights actually, we have records of knights telling us, hey, can you make it harder for someone else to open the visor for for me. And so sometimes you have double combinations with pins and stuff like that because they've seen that happen. GG.
Okay, so Henry raising his visor there just makes me want to talk about the real Battle of Shrewsbury. So 1403, Henry IV's army with Prince Hal amongst them take on the Percy army. There is no duel like this. There is armed conflict. There is a big battle. Prince Hal, who is 16 years old, is actually struck in the face by an arrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a very famous situation, which is why then he had this scar. And that's the reason why he didn't want you to see the scar. So every time he's painted, he's always represented from the side, and he always shows you the side that didn't have the scar.
And he then has to be treated, and it takes them several days. A doctor named John Bradshaw devises this special device for
Exactly, he had to produce a special device because the arrow actually had lodged, it knocked off a couple of teeth and lodged itself so deep inside the mouth of the king, well, not king at the time, but you know what I mean, that it was extremely difficult to remove it without causing extreme damage, infection, and whatnot.
Removing the arrowhead from his face.
Yeah.
So Henry comes out of this with a huge scar on the side of his face.
Absolutely.
It's believed to be the reason that the only portrait we have of him as king is in profile. So you only see the side of his face that he wants you to see. You don't see the side with the big scar on it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
And this was a really big, serious, important battle and a major win for Henry IV in trying to enforce his rule fairly early on in his kingship. Henry V king, because Henry V becomes king, and otherwise this wouldn't be the film that it is. So they kind of need to get rid of Thomas, and they just have him randomly off screen. You know, he's died, and Hal didn't even know his brother was dead. But that doesn't happen. So Thomas, we know, Henry's younger brother, along with their other two brothers, would serve in France, and Thomas would die just before Henry dies in France, serving his brother and fighting battles on his behalf.
Let's have a look at the pacifist part. This is interesting. Oh, this is interesting.
So William Gascoigne is Chief Justice during the reign of Henry IV. He keeps that role at the beginning of Henry V's reign. Interestingly, the film is still giving us this Henry who is really reluctant. I think Henry comes
Because it's a sad boy.
to the throne with an almost immediate plan that war with France is the way he solves the problems in England. I don't think he needs any convincing of this. And in fact, the real Henry would have seized upon any excuse.
Absolutely. I wonder why they went for that.
It's interesting to see which one of the buttons it is that is going to lead Henry to actually engage in what we know he will do. So he's been personally insulted. His people have been insulted. He's sitting on a better legal claim, perhaps. What will it take for Henry to go to war? Well, in real life, nothing. He wants to do it.
They use a lot of sections from the film, but I don't know how they do that, because every time I try to put a little bit of a film, I get copy claimed. The strategy behind Agincourt, oh, that's a good section.
Henry makes the decision after the siege of Harfleur. There is lots of suggestion that they should take ship and go round to Calais, which the English also hold. But Henry decides to take his army across land, and no one can kind of really make sense of why he's doing this. It's a much more dangerous route. The siege of Harfleur has left some of his army ill with dysentery, so the rampant diarrhea that is the problem encountered by lots of medieval armies. Some of them have
Rampant.
been shipped home. Some have had to be left in Harfleur as a garrison there to protect the town, so the French can't just take it back. So we do get this kind of ragtag group making its way across France, and I quite like this sort of straggly line of them meandering their way through the French countryside.
Music in this film is really, really good, very atmospheric.
Absolutely the things that were playing into people's minds on the eve of Agincourt, how they're going to defeat what looks like a superior army.
I actually really like the fact that they focused so much on the weather, the conditions, the rain, the mud, because of course that was one of the most important aspects of the Battle of Agincourt. I think I should make a new video on the Battle of Agincourt, because I did make one many, many years ago, but you know, I think I could do a much better job now. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments and I'll consider it.
That is a tactic they used at Agincourt. They did fight dismounted, but it wasn't a new tactic, and I'm not sure that the noblemen around would have been having
Absolutely, the entirety. I mean, that was the typical way of the English knight, to dismount and fight on foot. The crazy thing in there is the idea of, oh, we wear no armor. Yeah, because the armor is, that's ridiculous. That would have been something like, do what, sir? But the idea of, fighting without the horses is like, yeah, that's what the English do.
Their minds blown by this incredible general, Falstaff, who knows all of war, has come up with this brand new tactic that we can use. They've been doing this for years.
Exactly, well said.
Please speak English.
Nonsense. Dauphin. Oh, please speak English.
I enjoy to speak
Yeah,
English.
he loves it.
Okay, there is no way the Dauphin would want to talk to the King of England in English. He would
Thank you, Matt.
expect the King of England to be speaking French to
French.
him. And the idea that he would be sitting when a king walks in the room, that would be considered really, really insulting to Henry. The Dauphin is just
Nice spotting.
a prince. Henry is a king.
But anyways, that's not even a problem. The problem is that Dauphin wasn't there. The prince was not there. So the entire section with the duel and the fight and then the prince gets killed and all that situation, this talking and the mocking and the never happened. Never happened. Spoiler alert. Ah, Dauphin. Ah, pourquoi, Dauphin? Pourquoi? Je voudrais manger une baguette, s'il vous plaît.
But also this meeting didn't happen. The Dauphin was not at Agincourt. He stayed with his father away from the army. Charles VI suffered from bouts of serious mental illness and was often incapable of ruling. And so his son took on lots of the responsibility, but chose not to go to Agincourt. So this idea of a duel is coming back again. We saw this at Shrewsbury where it didn't happen, but it's clearly Henry's desire to avoid this widespread bloodshed by fighting duels one-on-one, having a strong belief in his own abilities. Interestingly, he does offer one-on-one combat to the Dauphin while he's in France. While they're marching towards what will become the battlefield at Agincourt, he's being trailed by a French army, and he does send letters to the Dauphin saying, do you know what? We don't need all of these people to fight. Why don't you and me have a duel? And the Dauphin sort of doesn't explicitly reject it, but never accepts the offer. He finds excuses to get out of having a duel with Henry. And in France...
Probably because they were confident with the cavalry, the full plate, they didn't want to risk their own lives. They would expend their own men, particularly if they're confident, but then they were very confident. They probably thought it was an act of desperation on the King of England's side.
This was considered slightly dishonourable, so they were concerned that their prince, their future king, was rejecting the idea of a chivalric duel against the King of England, because the suggestion is obviously that he feared he would lose, that the King of England was the better warrior.
Surrender to me!
Actually, that was excellent acting. I liked that.
That could have had a huge impact on both armies. So Henry does offer single combat to the Dauphin. The Dauphin rejects it, which damages the morale of the French people and enhances the morale of the English, who now think the French are scared of them. So whether Henry ever envisaged the...
I don't know if I would see it that way, but it's not that I'm disagreeing with Matt, but I think the English, the men, would have really wanted for the French to accept it so that they don't have to risk their lives and they can possibly go home. So I don't know how much that would have been a boost in morale. I think a boost in morale would have been the exact opposite. So that's just how I see it. But let me know what you noble ones think in the comments.
Dauphin accepting and actually having a one-on-one duel with him is hard to know, but there is a psychological element to even making the offer and hoping that it will be refused. So pre-battle speeches seem to have happened a fair bit. They're often reported in chronicles. How accurate they are, we don't know. Do they apply a bit of hindsight and polish to the pre-battle speeches?
Very likely, yes.
That were given. But it does seem that these moments were viewed as a last moment to remind people why they're there, what they're fighting for, and why it's important that you win this battle, and quite often warn people that, you know, your families...
Anyways, I'm getting too interested in it, and I don't want... So Battle of Agincourt, let's check this one out, and then I'll leave all the rest for you to click the link in the description and watch the original video. As I was saying, when it comes to the weapons, you will notice that oftentimes you will see this, which is correctly proportioned warhammers and maces and pole weapons and pole axes. That is something I very much appreciated. What I don't appreciate is this mail. That is completely, oh my gosh, they're mail. And even the breastplate, to be honest, just wearing mail, like you see these soldiers here, would have been considered inappropriate in the 15th century. Like wearing just mail for war is absolutely enough for 12th century army, absolutely. But in the 15th century, you would have to wear mail and a brigandine, even if you want to go light. Mail and a brigandine, mail and some plate, at least a certain degree of plate. Just wearing mail for 15th century, you're not adequately dressed for war.
They've given us a green field. We know that the field was a freshly ploughed one, so this would likely have been a brown, muddy field rather than the green, grassy field that we've got.
Totally. Very good for pointing that.
And I guess although this isn't the tactics at Agincourt, I quite like the idea that they've gone for the slow march forward. Lots of these films would be tempted to go for people running at full pelt.
He's absolutely correct. I just wish we could see the 7,000 archers that the King of England actually deployed on the field, together with 1,500 men-at-arms and knights, sure, but still, you know, we should see an overwhelming amount of archers. That's how you do the Battle of Agincourt. And also, please note that these knights are charging with swords. They're not using lances. That, maybe there are two in the back, but only because they're basically standard bearers. These knights are charging with swords. The knights, the cavalry charges actually were rendered almost useless in the sense that because of the slopes where all the archers were placed. Well, yeah, there are like a couple of archers here. They just show a couple of archers. That's why I still remember it. I watched it in 2019. I still remember it. You see just a bunch of archers there, whereas it would have been 7,000. And they do a couple of volleys from very far away, and that's it. Not to mention those arrows penetrate plate armor, their breastplates. Another nonsensical thing to see.
Haunt the enemy into moving off their position and making the attack. A key part of what happens at Agincourt, the majority of the army that are there on the English side are archers.
Exactly.
And so it's them raining down arrows that really drive the French to attack.
I don't like that you say raining down arrows. They might have done a couple of those, maybe. But the reality of fact is that in all pieces of iconography, we see archers shooting a point blank, archers making each shot count, because English archers were extremely good at aiming. They were professionals. And they didn't have unlimited ammo, of course, arrows. So you want to make each shot count. And they were really good at picking you and choosing a target and shooting it, even at point blank. So the rain of arrows has never been something that I like, particularly if that's the only thing we see. We should see, once the armies collapse, the archers to continue to incessantly bound them with arrow after arrow after arrow, but aiming with purpose and skill.
The French are still, arguing over who's going to attack first. They all want the glory of leading the first charge because they think the English will be so easy to defeat that this will be over quickly.
Very true.
And those leading the vanguard will get all of the glory of defeating a King of England on French soil. So the disarray in the French army really plays into the English hands.
They didn't even wait. Not everyone had arrived. That's another important thing. It's just some knights thought it was going to be so easy, French knights, that they actually went on with the battle even though there were still more troops coming.
At this point, and leads them to want to charge. They don't need much of an excuse to be charging headlong into battle, and the archery fire is what will ultimately drive them to.
Yeah, that's such a stupid thing to do. Please complain about it. Come on, man.
Hal sort of hiding in the woods, and there's no sense that he's doing that at all. He uses the woods to funnel the French, but he's not using it particularly as cover.
Also because it would have been so easy to spot them in there.
Henry is actually with the vanguard of his own men. He is right at the centre of the fighting.
This is why I like this. You see? The reproduction, 50s reproduction.
At one point, it's so close to the enemy that he's wearing a crown on his helmet and a piece of it is chipped off because he's so close to the enemy. So yeah, I think they're getting more and more wrong here. The Dauphin's not there. Henry is not hiding. Okay, so they've gone for the knock, draw, loose, which would be the calls we would expect. So you knock the arrow, you draw the bow, and you loose.
Which they should draw all the way back to the ear to be historically correct. If you look at the position of medieval archers actually assume, they actually step forward a little bit.
The one thing that they do a lot in films like this is that they hold on the draw.
Yeah.
And medieval archers would not be keen to do that. These war bows are incredibly hard work.
Yeah, even all the way up to 160 pounds, which takes a lot of strength and training, years. So I think I watched enough. If you want to see the rest, absolutely click the link in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. See you tomorrow.